So hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited. We have the fabulous Caroline Seale here with us, who's going to talk everything about gut health because it's a huge topic. And a lot of you guys have asked that you get more information on this. So Caroline, you're so welcome to the channel. I'd love to start off with letting the audience know how you got into nutritional therapy and your journey into this and being the expert in gut health.
Okay, yeah. So how I got interested, well, a little bit about me. I'm originally from a dairy farm in County Laois. So I was lucky to grow up surrounded by nature. And then I worked in business and marketing for a number of years. And then totally my life changed in 2006. And I remember it clearly because it was after a trip I had done to New Zealand. And when I came back, my energy just wasn't the same and my digestive system wasn't the same. And over time it was getting worse. So I went to my GP and he diagnosed me after a few months. Lucky he diagnosed me early because it can take 6 months to diagnose ME. So ME is myalgic encephalomyelitis, also known as chronic fatigue syndrome. So he diagnosed that within a couple of months. And then a gastroenterologist diagnosed IBS. So that set me, he said, there's nothing we can do really. He said, you just kind of have to go off and do the research yourself. So he kind of put his hands up about that, which, fair play to him. And I went off then and did my research. And that's where I instinctively went towards nutrition. And I started studying nutrition. And that's where I went to the Irish Institute of Nutrition and Health at the time, now known as the International Institute. And I did their course and then went on to do another 3 years in nutritional therapy. So that was really interesting. And it really showed me the power of food to get well. So it wasn't just food as well, it was other lifestyle changes and then, complementary therapies that helped. But that set me on a whole new path and I changed career as a result of it. Yeah.
Amazing. And it is obviously people find themselves sometimes almost at rock bottom when the body isn't responding the way that it's meant to. And this is where it leads into different things. But for those that are listening and may have kind of that niggle and have been ignoring it, how important is a person's gut health for overall health and wellness?
Well, it's super important. Like I look at it as the master system in our body. If the gut health isn't working well, it affects the other body systems. So, you want to be digesting and absorbing your food well. So you could have the best diet in the world, but unless you're breaking down and absorbing your food, for an example, you're not getting the most nutrients from your food. And also, the gut has all these microbiome in it, these microbiota that have a direct effect on other systems. For example, our immune system. 80% of our immune system is in our gastrointestinal tract. And we're all mindful of that now, especially coming into the winter months and with COVID going around. So that's the link with the immune system. And then also it's interlinked with our brain health. So the gut and the brain are interconnected by the vagus nerve. So say, for example, if you suffer from low mood or poor memory, it's important to look at your gut health. And another example of where the gut and the brain are interconnected is, say, for example, you might be a bit nervous or anxious about doing an interview at work. And you notice you're going to the toilet more, you might have loose bowels, or you might notice your kind of butterflies in your stomach. So that's the kind of a classic example of how the systems are interconnected. And actually, another thing is 80% of our serotonin, that feel-good hormone, that's produced in our gastrointestinal tract. So you can begin to see how important it is, because it's interconnecting with all these body systems. And another thing to think about is just kind of think of it like an ecosystem. So like balanced ecosystem is like a healthy rainforest. You've got plants and animals and they're all living in harmony. They're all dependent on each other in that forest. And as do our different, in our bodies, we have our different viruses, yeast and fungi. They're all working in synergy in a healthy GI tract, in a gastrointestinal tract. So
wow. So there's loads going on, really. That's
that we don't realize. We're walking around every day.
Yeah.
Our bodies are just amazing what they're doing naturally, and we take it for granted, I think.
Absolutely. And if there was, say, your top 3 tips for people getting started, that they've never kind of tuned into their gut, they haven't looked after it, what would be the top 3 things they could start with to get the ball rolling, per se?
Okay, well, some of these might be news, some of them mightn't be, but there's a lot of talk now around diversity in the diet, and fiber is really, really important. So you may have heard of fiber, but just to explain, so research shows that people who eat less than 30 different plant-based foods in a week, or people, sorry, that eat at least 30 different, have a more diverse microbiome than people who ate less than 10.
Wow.
Okay, so the whole aim is to try and, look at what you're eating in a week. And we tend to all buy the same type of foods when we go to the supermarket. We're kind of habitually doing it, probably saves time. But I often kind of say to myself, even myself, do I have a shopping list? Because a shopping list shows you're buying different foods. Because if you don't have your shopping list, you're on that your routine, the habit, you know what you're getting every week. And actually look at people going around the supermarket, and not many people have a shopping list because you're kind of getting the same type of foods. So that diversity is really important, because we want diversity because different microbes have different roles in our body that are supporting our health. And there's more research coming out now on that, on the different microbes and what they do. But when you're thinking of looking at your 30 different plant-based foods in a week, you're looking at your fruits, your vegetables, herbs, they even count, nuts and seeds, whole grains, lentils. So all those type of foods. And 30 might seem high, so maybe say aim towards 20. But why that is key, right? The reason behind it is when we eat this fiber, it feeds our good bacteria, right? And the bacteria break it down. So it's not broken down in the body just like, it's broken down in the body by bacteria. So if we don't have enough bacteria there, it's not going to be broken down properly, and you're going to start suffering from health issues. So the bacteria break it down, and then they form short chain fatty acids. So they're super important, brilliant for our immune health. They also support energy. So we actually get 20% of our energy from our short chain fatty acids. And another thing is they help to reduce appetite. So if you're looking at, weight management, they're important for that. So you're thinking of all those reasons that why you're having the fiber is to produce those short chain fatty acids. So that might be something you might not be aware of, but yes, that's one of the reals. So that's number one,
the
fiber. Number 2 then is, and I always look at this when I'm working with clients, not just food, but I look at the person's stress response, especially when it comes to gut health, because our thoughts and how we perceive, I suppose, what's going on around us has an effect on our gut health. So like the gut and the brain are, like I said, are interconnected with the vagus nerve. And I explained that earlier, but also I was just thinking of a client I had the other day, and she had an awful lot of digestive health issues. And, she said first thing in the morning, she was worried about eating food. And I said, do you enjoy your food? And she said, no, I'm actually angry with my gut. So when she said the word anger, I was like, okay, let's look at that and reframe the thoughts around the anger and change it to happier, feel good thoughts, to, because you're talking to your gut. So how would you talk to your friend? You want to talk to it well and start to love it, and then it calms down. So again, it's looking at your thoughts around food, what your stress is like. Emotional stress especially has an effect on the gut, because, and the reason behind that is, your body is thinking it's under threat and it's going into fight or flight, and it wants to flee that situation. So what's happening is the energy is diverting away from your gut, your digestion, towards your muscles to run, to flee, to run away. So when that energy has been sent away to the muscles, it means you're not producing your enzymes as well as you should be, or your stomach acid, and that helps break down and absorb your food. So the stress response, and even things like, people notice, they might feel more kind of muscles tense, constipated. So there's different types of symptoms you can have, but stress, managing that is really important. And then the third tip would be, and there's a lot now of talk around it, is ultra processed foods. So trying to reduce that and look back at what did our grandparents have when they were growing up. Real food And a lot of it when it comes to gut health would be looking at sugars. So foods that are high in added sugar and say artificial sweeteners as well. Again, there's a lot coming out about artificial sweeteners and how it can affect our gut health. So there would be my top 3 tips. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think you hit on something there, Caroline, about the ultra processed, where even sometimes I get bamboozled when marketing plays a part to say this is healthy, but you really have to read your labels, don't you, and become savvy on everything.
Yeah. Like I do a talk on reading food labels, and it goes down well, and it gets people really looking, because again, people sometimes say, well, I don't have the time to read the food labels when I'm in the supermarket.
Yeah.
But even when you're at home and you're sitting at having your meal, just, get a packaged product out and start looking at it yourself. And suddenly you see, if there's a long list of ingredients, then, and you can't pronounce them, then that's a definite sign, that you need to try and do some swaps.
Yeah. Or as I always say is, the supermarket is, when you stay to in most supermarkets, the structure, you stay to the outside, the fruits, the vegetables, the frozen fruits and vegetables, you're safe.
Exactly.
You're like, oh my goodness, that's when you're tempted. And I read recently, they were saying with marketing, they've, like, say your crisps packets, it's the colours that they use resemble fruits and vegetables, so we're drawn to them. And I was like, oh wow, we're so manipulated.
That they're using.
It's mad. And then, so for anybody that's listening that would have allergies or intolerances to certain foods. So what I tend to see recently is a lot of people, if they have dairy products, or if they consume a lot of one product, should they start to look at their gut health first?
If they're starting to notice intolerances, yes.
Yeah.
Because, and especially if you're noticing it, like, don't leave it go on too long, because that food is triggering an immune reaction, and it's possibly damaging the lining of your gut, which is known as intestinal permeability or leaky gut. It's when the gut lining becomes damaged. So say if you start to notice that dairy is causing some issues for you, common things people react to with dairy would be kind of mucousy, or nasally, runny nose, sinusitis, that type of thing. Asthma is looking at, eliminating dairy. So say you think what I would do with someone is what's called an elimination challenge diet. So remove dairy for say 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then reintroduce it in small amounts, because sometimes people have a dose tolerance. They can get away with it in small amounts, but then not in larger amounts. And keep a food and symptom diary. That's really good to do as well. And just see then how you're reacting as you reintroduce it. But try and not let it go on too long, because that intolerance could be damaging the lining of your gut and then lead you to more intolerances over time.
Yeah.
Because that lining is becoming, how to explain it is, think of the lining of your gut like a sieve, and there's little holes in the sieve, and those holes shouldn't be there. So food particles are getting through into the bloodstream, which shouldn't be, large food particles, and causing a reaction. So we want that lining to be nice and, like smooth and not too porous. So around, does that answer your question around?
No, it does. And it really just pinpoints that, again, when people get these little niggles, not to put it off, is to really investigate and work with somebody like yourself that can actually help and support their journey along the way.
Exactly. And it's kind of easier now. It's not like it was 10 years ago when it comes to, say, if there's an issue with dairy or with gluten. There is really good alternatives out there, and it's just making sure, like we were saying earlier, is that they're not too processed. And it's getting the support early is really important, because things can it's listening to our bodies. Sometimes we're just so busy in our lives, that we're not tuned in.
We're fast paced, and we're like jigsaw pieces, like you mentioned, the stress, and then if people are intolerant, it's just really, we have to put back the broken pieces, and it can take time, and people have to allow the time. I think we get frustrated with our bodies when it doesn't heal overnight.
As well. Want just that one quick fix that will do it, but
Yeah.
It unfortunately doesn't work like that. Sometimes you can be really lucky and there could be one simple thing, but it does. It takes time, but with the right support, you can get there, and you have a plan. If you have a plan in place, it really helps.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier on that you were diagnosed with IBS, but a lot of people now will be labelled with IBS, where they might go off and they go to the pharmacy and they're getting over-the-counter medication, and this could be a long-term thing. But with IBS, can you explain a little bit more about it and what people should do if that's what they've been told they have? Because they can do something about it.
They can, definitely. So like IBS is a name for a list of symptoms. So the symptoms can be, abdominal pain, constant bloating, alternating bowels. So some people can be more prone to constipation or diarrhea, or a mixture of both. And it can affect people's quality of life. It's dilapidating. I've people saying to me, I'm fearful of traveling on the train, or, taking a long journey with work or going into the office. But all those type of symptoms, nausea, headaches can be part of it. And then people have varying degrees of anxiety, and low mood, rectal pain. So it's all fatigue, all of these symptoms, right? But these symptoms could be symptoms of something else. And it is like a medication is like putting a plaster on the wound. It's like, okay, let's look at what is the root cause of these symptoms. So it could be, and sometimes IBS symptoms mimic other health conditions. For example, SIBO, that's small intestinal bowel overgrowth. It's an area that I would specialize in as well, because about 70% roughly of people with IBS could have small intestinal bowel overgrowth. So it's looking at that balance of bacteria in the different areas of the gastrointestinal tract. So in the small intestine, but also in the large. But common causes of IBS symptoms. So if you get to the root cause, then they can all go, would be like a food intolerance that we just spoke about.
Yeah.
Infection. Sometimes actually, I think it's 20 to 25% of cases of IBS come from an infection. So somebody may have some type of infection in the past. Then sugar, back to sugar, the culprit we're always talking about, that affects the gut motility. So like if you're having a lot of sugar in your diet, it shoots up your blood sugar levels. But when it shoots up, raises your blood sugars, it causes a big decrease in the motility of our gut. So you could be more prone to, constipation, and then, the bloating, all the other symptoms. So things like that are things to look at if there is symptoms of IBS. And it's following a kind of a protocol, I suppose, where, you're removing certain foods, you're reintroducing other ones, and you're just working on re-inoculating all that microbiome to try and bring it back into balance again. So it's not a quick fix. It's like a lifestyle change, because there's probably something in the diet or something that happened in the past, like an infection, to imbalance the microbiome. So it's like what's imbalance in that microbiome, and there is something imbalance in it, and you can get to that cause, and then if you can eliminate it, it's possible to clear all the symptoms.
So it is great it gives hope to people listening that have been diagnosed with IBS and think that this is something that I have to tolerate. But for those that are listening or watching today and they feel, okay, right, this sounds like me, can they dig deeper? Is there certain tests that they can get to really find out what is going on?
Yeah, so what I kind of do with people, because sometimes people want a test done, but what I say is a consultation first is really important, because when you're working with a health practitioner, building up a picture of what predisposed you to the symptoms. And so what are the triggers that are going on in the diet, in the lifestyle, in the environment? And then you're using the test as another layer on top of that to build a bigger picture to get to the root cause. So the test on its own won't do it. But common tests I would use would be for IBS would be a SIBO breath test that's done with a lab in Ireland called GastroLife. So that's a test looking at the overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. And then another test I would work with, which is looking at more the large intestine, because you have your small intestine, your large. The large would be a comprehensive stool test that's done through private labs. Mostly I would work with labs in the UK. And they're really good quality tests. That one is PCR test. So we're all familiar with that with COVID. And so it's got a really good validity. And that test will look for things like the level of inflammation going on in the body, how well the digestive system is working in terms of breaking down and absorbing food. So it'll look for certain markers on how well the person is breaking down their protein and their fats. And it'll also look for other things like within the microbiome on the bacteria, you know, the good and the bad bacteria, what levels of yeast is in there, what levels of parasites, all that. So it's really building that bigger picture, I suppose, you know, where a practitioner can see, okay, this is dysbiosis is what we say is a term for the imbalance of good and bad bacteria. Yeah. So it'll help us to see, or me to see, how what level that is at and how then we can support it more.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's, you know, listening, it's not invasive. It's, you know, for somebody going, oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not, totally not. It's basically a test kit is posted out to your house, and you get all the instructions. They're very straightforward to read, and you take your stool sample at home. And sometimes, you know, you would need to avoid certain like probiotics before you do the test, but all those are on the instructions. And you take the stool sample at home and then courier it off the next day to a lab in the UK. And results are back within about 14 working days.
Brilliant.
Or sometimes a bit longer.
Yeah.
And and it's a really good report. It's quite user friendly, but a practitioner will go through that.
Great. And have you ever come across parasites when you've been working with clients? Have they ever been diagnosed? Is that something that it's a thing?
Yeah, it is. And it's an interesting area. So when I qualified as a nutritional therapist 12 years ago, we were trained then, or the thought then was, okay, let's remove the parasite, you know, remove it with antimicrobials, or possibly refer to GP for antibiotics. But now the thinking has evolved more over time as we learn more about the microbiome, and back to what I was saying about the healthy ecosystem and everything working in balance, is you have to be mindful of, you know, is it a good idea to remove that parasite? You know, what I would do is work on building up the strength of the immune system of the person, and building up the microbiota and all those different, you know, microflora and the different strains of microflora, and try and build that up and strengthen the immune system as much as possible, so that then they're not getting the symptoms of the parasite. Because a lot of people can have a parasite but have no symptoms.
Right.
So it's maybe the parasite shows in the test, but that possibly isn't the cause, even though it's there. It could be something else.
Yeah. So it is a big picture that people have to paint and find out and piece back everything. And sometimes it may go back, as you said, like I know myself, I was on antibiotics since I was a child, and obviously that has had an impact on my overall health and well-being. So it can stem back from a bigger picture.
Yeah, it can. Like with me, I had asthma as a child, and I suffered a lot from chest infections. I was on antibiotics. So that predisposed me more to than possibly getting ME, which I think was a virus. It wasn't ever diagnosed, but it felt like viral symptoms. Why did I get that versus somebody else? Possibly because my microbiome was more, you know, out of balance. And I was more susceptible. So it really is working with a good practitioner that's skilled to know, is it the right time now to remove this parasite, or should I be working on building up the immune system first?
Brilliant.
And then working on removing the parasite. Because when they build up the immune system, the symptoms might all go. Or something else might be, you know, building up, working on other areas.
No, that's brilliant. And say we touched there on, say, probiotics. So they seem to be on trend at the moment. Is this something that you would recommend to clients to take just to build up their microbiome while they work on their food as well?
Yes, I do, because I mean, I always say food is first. So, you know, back to the fiber and having that diversity, because that is like I said, feeding the bacteria and all these strains that haven't been researched that we don't know about. But yes, I would go in, you know, I'd work on trying to encourage change in the diet, and then depending on the symptoms is going with a probiotic. And, you know, there's really good probiotics out there now with different strains for different conditions. So specific ones for IBS, ones for skin health, one for brain health. So there's a lot more research coming out about it, which is quite exciting. And it's great then as practitioners, when we see the difference it makes, you know, even with some people with change in diet and taking a good probiotic. So, so yes, probiotic supplements are important, but then also the probiotic foods. So, you know, having yogurts, the mixture of sauerkraut, the kefir, and try and introduce the different types of foods as well. But often we do need maybe a stronger dose, a higher amount for a short period of time, again, to try and get things back into balance again. After antibiotics, for example. Take a probiotic.
Super. And the last question, you've been fantastic. I think you've answered so many questions that people are really going to relate to. Is sometimes people think, well, I'll just go for a colonic. I'll just do it, get everything out. I've got them before in the past years ago when I wasn't trained or didn't know anything. But what's your thoughts on a colonic? Can they support, or are they taking out the good bacteria that we're putting in?
Yeah, well, they remove, you know, toxins and buildup of bacteria in the gut, and they're going to help ease and relieve symptoms for a while, and maybe the constipation and the bloating. But if you haven't got, again, back to the root cause of what's causing that buildup, you know, how looking at the diet and looking at the lifestyle, then it's going to come back again. And yes, you're possibly removing the good bacteria. You're removing everything with that colonic. You're removing the good and the bad. So, you know, people might feel great afterwards, but then if symptoms are returning, it's like, okay, let's look at things more and deeper and see what's going on. But it can be temporarily good. I've never had one myself now. I listen to my, excuse the pun, gut a lot. And I was kind of a little bit like, no, it just didn't sit right with me. So I done, but I'm sure people do find benefit from them. But then I would question if symptoms are returning, you know.
So the kind of key takeaways from today's chat is that people really, they need to work with a professional, because it does take time, and allow time and really to investigate what's going on if anybody does have any symptoms that we've mentioned in the video.
It's getting the right support. Sometimes it's hard on your own. Like I've been there in the early stages when I was at my worst, researching everything online, relying on Dr. Google, which is not the best thing in the world to be doing. And then you're stressing yourself out a little bit more, nearly you're getting conflicting information. Whereas if you go to a good practitioner and they have a plan for you and a rationale behind why they're doing what they're doing, you know, it takes that anxiety away. So
brilliant. And where can people find you, Caroline? So if they want to reach out, where's the best place to find you?
So the best place is my website, discovernutrition.ie. So I work all online now. I'm based in Still, Oregon, but in Dublin, but all of my work is online. So yeah, if you check out discovernutrition.ie, you'll find me there. And then I have my different social media channels, which you'll see on my homepage, on my website. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I haven't been very active now over the summer. I've taken a little break, but I'll be back now.
And it's nice. I think that's one of the things too, is you need to calm, you know, not the stress levels. Everyone needs to switch off as well.
I'm a firm believer in that.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to Caroline. That's been fantastic. I'll pop all of Caroline's links down below, and do go check her out. And if you do have anything, she's the main woman to help you and support you along your journey. So thanks, everybody.